your imagination or your intuitive mind or the inner man to create something new and good. This is the term creativity. But the biggest issue with people, the moment they start using the term creativity is immediately we start engaging with an artist or an architect or a musician or a painter or a dramatist or whatever it is. But that is far from reality, far from truth. Creativity is an everyday act. It can be anyone can be part of that process, and God indeed he, expects and indeed has designed us for creativity, which is what we are trying to discuss or talk about today, and how important it is in our lives. Personally, if you ask me, my journey has always been a tough journey. There has been tremendous ups and downs, but in all of that, what has led me through, what has sustained me is the fact that you are able to create something new on a daily basis or on a project to project basis. And I think that is something that by extension can go to every department of our lives. Now, coming, I want to be having a presentation and I would be having a short script conversational type of talk, maybe maximum 30 minutes or 35 minutes. I wouldn't engage more than that. And I would touch a few points which is so very important in this journey of being a creative person. And I think there is uh, every reason to believe that there's no person in this world, in this created order, who can live without being creative, because that is how we are designed foundationally and fundamentally. So, the ultimate act of creativity is seen in the book of Genesis. The ultimate act of creativity. If creativity is an act which is coming out of imagination and something which is new and good, then the ultimate act of creativity is in the book of Genesis. Because we read in the beginning, God created heavens and earth. That is the biggest act of creativity. And when we read through a few verses, which I will just touch upon, you will understand that what is God's intent for all of our lives. When God created us, He said in the book of Genesis that God created man in His own image. God created man in His own image. So here is God at one point who has done the ultimate act of creativity by creating the heavens and the earth, and He found that it was good. And then He says, you and me are created in His own image. So what do we expect from this particular, when we try to connect these two verses, something massive is unfolding, isn't it? And then in Exodus we have something which is hardcore ground reality, which is more very practically spoken. When in Exodus chapter 35, 31, and 32 verse says, and He has filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill, with intelligence, with knowledge, and with all craftsmanship to devise designs to work in gold and silver and bronze. He has filled us with the Spirit of God for what? With skill, with intelligence, with knowledge, and with all craftsmanship. So the point what I'm trying to say is there is in the beginning an ultimate act of creativity was done, and beginning God created heaven and earth, and then the verses subsequent says God created man in His own image, and then in Exodus we understand that the verse says He has filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill, with intelligence, with knowledge, with all craftsmanship. Now that is boundless, right? We are filled with that kind of a capability right now, all of us. We don't realize it. And then in Proverbs, you see, it is written, chapter 22, do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings, he will not stand before obscure men. There's a positive enactment where he says that by deliberate design we will stand before kings, and we will not stand before obscure men, a man who is skilled in his work. So, and then in Ephesians also, we read very interestingly, chapter 2, verse 10, we are God's accomplishment. Just think about the massiveness of all these verses that is packing into our lives. We are God's accomplishment created in Christ Jesus to do good things. God planned for these good things to be the way that we live our lives. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. We are God's accomplishment created in Christ Jesus to do good things, and He planned all these good things to be the way that we live our lives. Now, these are very, very important statement pointers, which gives us an idea that we are intended to be geniuses of a sort in some way or the other. We are supposed to be the most creative part of creation. And God endowed us, and He intended us to be in His image. So that gives us a tall order. And uh, now let me move on to something which is not exactly in the biblical sense, but I would try to unravel or unpack what is it that really uh, creates that creative urge in us or the creative streak in us in our practical life. Now, whether we are a homemaker or we are a scientist, we are an artist or a movie star or a producer or an industrialist or an academician, whatever it is, in all the disciplines, how do we engage the element of creativity to the level that is expected by God, as evident through these initial verses that we have just espoused? I'm going to take you through a journey of 7 points. This is very, very important. This is applicable to every person, including little children. When we try to design a life based on these 7 foundations, our innate creative urge, our creative capabilities rise to the topmost point, and we will be able to really be the most effective creative people in our workplace, in the way we operate in our lives. And then I will try to link it up with certain verses, and then I will be through. The first point is, sorry that I don't have a slide, I didn't get the time to do it, but the first point is 7 points I'm going to cover through. The first point is, now these 7 points are very, very important to release the creative mind in your life and my life. One is the unrelenting quest for continuous learning. Is there a curious approach in life? Let me reinforce that statement. The unrelenting quest for continuous learning. Is there a curious approach to life? Great minds ask great questions. Are we really slowly and steadily fashioning ourselves to that mode of continuous learning? Do we have that innate energy in us? Are we cultivating that habit to us? When we really look at the greatest minds of the world, the greatest artists and the scientists like Albert Einstein, Alexander the Great, or Thomas Jefferson, or Michelangelo, or Leonardo da Vinci, and all the sorts of those great people who have made great accomplishments in life, they have this tremendous quest for continuous learning. We need to really be able to do that. It is age doesn't matter, our stations in life doesn't matter, but we have that insatiable curiosity to life and that questions of what, when, how, why, all of that. Is that continuously happening? So in design schools, we always teach students to ask questions. It can be the most stupid questions, doesn't matter, but it is seemingly stupid questions. There's nothing stupid as such. Seemingly stupid questions, the world would say. But then if you have a continuous array of questions in your life, I think that is your first step in the journey to be the most creative person. In fact, Proverbs 18:15 says, an intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. You understand how it's connecting? The first point is unrelenting quest for continuous learning. And in the Bible, it says, I'm just trying to analyze the minds of the great men and then trying to come up with how the Bible correlates with that as how God intends us. The Proverbs, in the book of Proverbs, it says, an intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. And in Proverbs again, 1:7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the knowledge. The fear of the Lord, the reverence to the Lord. And once we do that, that is the foundation upon which we will start building up our knowledge level. Any disciplines for that matter. We always say that, okay, I am chosen for this path. That doesn't really matter anymore. In present day circumstances, you need to have the quest for knowledge, the quest for continuous learning. Maintain that tempo in life, And then we will go to the point number two, which is very, very important. The point number, the geniuses have done this. That's why I'm investing this. The geniuses of the world who have proven themselves to great accomplishments have been systematically pursuing this pathway. The second point is commitment to test knowledge through experience, persistence, and a willingness to learn from mistake. Commitment to test knowledge through experiences, persistence, and a willingness to learn from mistake. We always shy away from the do it yourself mode when we come to it. We always are very, very theoretical. We don't try prototypes. We don't dare to experiment lest we fail. We want to experiment, try to do those prototypes, try to do certain stuff like that, try to put yourself in position where certain things which you have acquired by reading, by listening, this knowledge is put to test by circumstancing yourself into certain situations, isn't it? Because uh, that is so very important, because uh, that is what that, as Romans chapter 5 verse 4 says, his grace produces perseverance, character, and hope. And if perseverance, character, and hope has to develop in us, foundationally his grace is required. But from the accountability of our human perspective, what we have to do is we have to commit to test our knowledge to what we have learned, whether it is scriptural knowledge or whether it is worldly secular knowledge. It has to be tested by practical experience. Take that first step to do certain things in life. Do that experimentation, do that modeling in life, do that prototyping in life. Every aspects of life. So the point number two is commitment to test knowledge. The great minds have always done that. They've gone into the labs, they've created prototypes, they have gone into life situations, experienced. If you want to, we talk about poverty, then are we really walking through the lanes of poverty and understanding what things are, and how are we, when we talk about experiences of any sort of experiences, do we put ourselves into real time life scenarios so that we are able to test what it is and understand? It reinforces it. It sort of ignites the foundational stuff in us to test and understand what we have learned through our knowledge. And the third is so very, very important. It is normally not very attentively listened to, but it is called continual refinement of all senses. Continual refinement of all senses, especially sight to enliven experiences. Our ears, our eyes, our nose, our taste, our touch. God has given these five senses to experience the world outside, the physical world outside. But are we really sharpening all of the five senses? We always tell design students and creative students, are you really listening well? Are you really seeing well? Are you touching and feeling and experiencing? Are you tasting in the way things are tasted to be tasted? Instead of just food, what is food all about? Is there a taste element to it? Do we savor that? Do we really let it remain for some time? So all the five senses are so very important if we want to really play at a very, very higher level of operation in the creative space, right? And especially sight. What do you see? And when you see, do you see different perspectives? Can we see things in different perspectives? What do you mean by perspectives? Different angles will give a different worldview. We always talk about how a bird would see a universe to the treetops and downside, and how do the same earthly creation is seen by an ant or a worm in a different way. So the great minds always used to change positions of perspectives and look at the same things, so that you are imbibing different angles and different visions of the same thing. That is so very important. So continual refinement of all senses, all the five senses, because that will enrich your life like anything. And the psalmist in the book of Psalms, chapter 119, verse 18, it says, open my eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of your law. Open my eyes. God has created this wonderful, beautiful creation. How do we give treat to our eyes? because especially the eyes, the vision is so very, very important. Use your eyes to the maximum. Capture the so much of beauty and aesthetics that is outside the world. Now that is point number 4, and I'm going to the point number 5. This is so very important. This is what you call the balance of the left brain and the right brain. The left brain and the right brain. We have endowed with both the analytical side and the creative side. We need not be in a no comfort zone in either of these uh, faculties. We need to be comfortable in both. So it is called the development of balance between science and art, logic and imagination, what you call the whole brain thinking. See, when you talk about scientists says I'm not artistic, but can you find art in science? The artist says I'm not scientific, but within that artistic creation, can you find a science to it? God created with both science and art this wonderful creation. So are you able to do that? Are you really thinking in those lines? When you see a scientific article, do you understand not only the scientific analysis which is encapsulated in that, but also the way it is written, the structure of it, the language? That is important. Romance and reason. I always heard people say that if you're very romantic, then reason cannot be there. And if you're a very reasonable person, he cannot be romantic. Now that is ridiculous. Can we find reason in romance and romance and vice versa? Romance and reason, that is what is called the whole brain thinking, right? That is what is called whole brain thinking, which is so very, very important. It is the balance between the left and the right brain. So Philippians 4, chapter 4, verse 8 says, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Avoid these prejudiced classifications. He's in that type, she's that type, and that is not the way it is. No, the world is a beautiful masterpiece in creation. And in that masterpiece, both the brains are well taken care of. Both logic, science and art is there. Logic and imagination is both there. A logical person says he cannot be imaginative. Imaginative person says I cannot be logical. That is not right. We can balance both. And the great minds have always journeyed their life balancing both. And they have cultivated the habit of the whole brain thinking. And even the Bible says, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Point number 6, cultivation of grace, dexterity, fitness, and poise. Our body is so very, very, very important. Are we taking care of it? Are we really taking care of it? Healthy, the food that we consume, the hours and the time and the pressures that we subject our body to it. We have the we really abuse it at times, isn't it? No, we need to have dexterity in the body. We need to have the grace. The dancers, haven't you seen? They have tremendous grace in their movement. You look at the movement. We always tell people, in architecture schools, we look at your hand. How do you hold your pencil? Is it too tightly held, or is it with a nimbleness? It is held, and there's a flowing motion in your hand. So that's called grace, the fitness and poise. It is so important, isn't it? Because God says our body is the temple of God. Our body is temple of God. So 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20 says, for you were bought with a price. There's a value that was given, the value of that blood of the lamb. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. So God values both. The body is so important. And if you want to have efficiency in your life, if you want to have that creative mind, let us do away with this false notion that the body can be abused. Absolutely not. Cultivation of grace, dexterity, fitness, and poise, and the Scripture also confirms us to this particular position in life. And finally, the seventh point is recognition and appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things and phenomena, which is called the systems thinking. I'm not a scientist, but at least I would be able to say that in quantum scientific terms, you go deeper and deeper through a microscope into the basic structure, and you would see a tremendous system evolving where everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected. There is nothing in isolation. Nature is connected to the build structures. The build as an architect, I would say when we construct a building, we would always think about the people, the lives that is there, the engineering that is there, the nature that is going to flow in and out of it, the 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 five senses which have to be engaged for maximum enjoyment, the emotions and the appeals have to come in, the intellectual values have to be brought in. So what am I trying to say? That there is no pursuit, there is no individual isolated instances in this world. There is an interconnected, which is called the systems thinking. There is an interconnectedness of everything in nature, and it's so important because Colossians says, "Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth." You see, when we look at the world below, the earth below from an aircraft, we see a completely different perspective. When we rise above, then we see the patterns emerge, right? The patterns are evolving. It is not like that is separate and this is separate. We see the flow of nature when we rise ourselves to a higher level. Similarly, when you set your things above, set your mind on things above, set your mind on God, and see the vision of this world and of his created order, of all the instances and incidents of life, and see there is a connection to it. There are ups. If there is an up, there is a down. If there is a mountain, there is a valley. If there is a light, there is a dark shade somewhere. Nothing is in isolation, because it is, then the terms becomes meaningless. So this gives us hope, because we know that nothing is in isolation. Now, if, for instance, if I understand something happening, bad happening, in something which is not very undesirable happening in my life, and then saying, why is this happening to me? When I have an interconnected the systems thinking, when I have a total perspective, that is what is called the grand weaver's design in life. When you see the patterns already in your mind. So I've just covered the 7 points, which is what the creative purposes of a godly life. The creative purposes. Now I will just reiterate or go through this journey once more, just quickly recap all this, so that you really are able to connect it and apply that in your life and my life. When God ordains us to be a creative person, he means us to live a life which would spur that creativity, which would create that potential in you and us, which is that innate potential, that intrinsic worth have to be surfaced, for which we have to fashion as a kind of a life, a daily routine, which would really make us topmost efficient performers in whatever fields that we. And that is how we can be true light to His glory that God has given to us through the Son. Because here it's again said, here we are God's accomplishment created in Christ Jesus to do good things. God planned for these good things to be the way that we live our lives. That is the way of our life. Not this kind of any average life. No, no, no mediocre life is expected from you and me. Absolutely not. So the point number one is that unrelenting quest for continuous learning, curious approach to life, insatiable curiosity to life. Try to develop that first. Then follow it up with a commitment to test that knowledge. Whatever we have tested, whatever we have learned, whatever scriptures that we have gone through, are we able to put that into a kind of a experiential situation? If experiences are not coming as part of our life, we have to create those experiences. You want to We want to talk about a lot of things. It should come from the heart only when we are experienced it through knowledge. So the knowledge is converted into experience through persistence and a willingness to learn from mistakes. When we try to test knowledge through prototypes and modeling, it is sure fact that there is going to be mistakes, but then we recover fast. Let's fail fast. That's what the new business mantra is. Let's fail fast. Let's fail fast. And but then we do it with a willingness to learn from our mistakes. So point number three, continual refinement of all senses, especially sight to enliven experience. Use your five senses to the utmost. Think about it. That is God's instruments given to experience the physical world out here. And let us not discount that. And sight is the most important. Our eyes, what does our eyes behold? The wondrous beauty of His creation. And that is going to really and keep our eyes open. Let us see from different perspectives the wondrous creation that God has endowed us with. And fourth is the willingness to embrace ambiguity, paradox, and uncertainty. There are situations in life which is, I think I missed that point. There is a point called the willingness to embrace ambiguity, paradox, and uncertainty in life. Do you think everything is going to be perfect in your life and my life? No, everything is not going to be perfect. There is definitely going to be uncertain times in our life. There is something, situations which we cannot, and it's so paradoxical. We really can't make head or tails of what is happening around us in our own life. There is ambiguity. The people around us are ambiguous. Our situations are ambiguous. There is uncertainty in the air. Let us not despair because the great minds have embraced that, understanding that there is always the interconnectedness of things. It is not something in isolation. And the fifth point is the development of balance between science and art, logic and imagination, and which is called the whole brain thinking. The left and the right brain, both are exercised. When you want to be a creative person, both should be exercised. And point number six is cultivation of grace, dexterity, fitness, and poise. Give tremendous importance to the body. Health, what we eat, how do we exercise, how do we maintain, and that is, and then it results in a kind of a grace and poise in our movement, in our actions and things like that. Let us be. We always tell people learn to live with the three L's: light, less, and light and less. Think about it. Let's cultivate grace, dexterity, fitness, and poise. And the final point is recognition and appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things and phenomena. What you call the systems thinking. Understand that nothing is in isolation. This whole universe is created with a matrix within a matrix. So within the matrix, everything is happening. All the experiences and all the natural phenomena, nothing is in isolation. Only when you have a greater perspective, try to look at things from a systems thinking, a whole perspective, then you are unleashing the potential of your mind. So and the best way is to go through the scriptures, and the scriptures are reinforcing all of that. I've given some select scriptures, and these scriptures reinforces all these 7 points. And when you set your mind on things above, rest your mind on Christ and the sacrifice, then and then not things on earth, then I'm sure we will be able to live to the potential that God has given us, and we will be able to be great pursuers of dreams, imaginations, and fantastic life. God has given us a beautiful life to live in. And if there are young people out there, I ask you to just explore your life, just go out, willing to experiment, do it. And there is nothing like it. To fail honorably is to be better than to succeed with a discount. To fail honorably is better than to succeed with a discount. Thank you so much. And I'm through with my talk. I didn't want to take it too long. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. George, for
And
sharing.
through, yeah,
Yep. Thank you very much for taking your time and being part of DRM. And so
thank you.
we'll be moving quickly into a time of Q&A, but before that, a few announcements to make. In the chat box, I've posted the link to our website and also the helpline number, and also the YouTube link of the DRM so that you can go and watch the previous sessions. And I hope you'll make use of that, and also you'll send it to your friends so that they can make use of it and be benefited through the work that is happening through DRM. So, if you have any questions, please do put it up in the chat box. I've got a bunch of questions as I was listening closely to Mr. George speak. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we can deal with them. Yep. So, Mr. George, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah. When knowledge increases, people tend to use it in various ways, right? So, how can one be creative in the right manner?
See, basically, that is why the second point which was said is immediately test your knowledge through experiences, persistence, right?
Mhm.
And what is going to happen is many of the knowledge that we have acquired or we thought that is sound knowledge will fail in the marketplace, right? It will fail in the marketplace. But then I said that there should be a willingness to learn from mistakes. So if you really look at the sequence of how that point is, point number one was unrelenting quest for continuous learning. That means you need to learn. And from that, immediately you're not jumping into a kind of a sort of a set mind that, okay, I have got that knowledge, I got that knowledge and stuff like that. No, the point number two is there's a commitment to test whatever I have done through experience, through persistence, and then follow it up with the third step, which is a willingness to learn from mistakes. So your knowledge becomes continually refined in this process. So that is why very important in the design labs. What we do is immediately when they take it when they come to a design, you say you stop it right at this point of time. Now go and do a prototype. Go and do your prototyping and let us test it. If it is tested and it's working well, okay, then continue. Otherwise, let's just go back, reiterate the entire journey, and then let's do it again. So that is very, very important. This particular sequence is very important. Most often, what happens is we are, in fact, even that is my issue. I do a little bit of reading in the scriptures and stuff like that. But have I tested? Have I really gone out into the marketplace and tested those things that I've read through and understood as a technical or an intellectual knowledge through experience? Maybe not. So that should not be. Maybe then that should not. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. George, for adding your thoughts.
There is
Other,
a question. Yeah.
yes, others, if you have questions, please do put up in the chat box so that we can deal with it. We have another question that has come up, and it says,
One question has come. Yeah.
yes, what bars humans from being
Go
creative?
ahead. Yeah, that is what I said. The points, the 7 points which I've said, this is what is barring because, first of all, we don't continuously learn anything. Then how do we expect unless there is input, how can there be output? We are always stop learning at some point of time in our lives, and we also learn only certain things in life. If it is certain sectors which is our comfort zone, we only be restrict to it. Our knowledge level has to encompass the creative mind of the creator, meaning which the world is our homework. We have to go out and learn, and then we have to test it. We have to refine our senses. The 7 points, if we really don't go through 7 points, we are barring our creativity. We are not we have become very, very uh, discomforted when there is ambiguity and paradox. I've seen certain people, who if things doesn't go their way, they become very, very, very disturbed and irritated. Yeah, so just the points which I've said, unless we do that, pursue those points, we will not be able to be creative. Unless we need to release ourselves, we need to be loose, we need to be very, very flexible also. We cannot be so straight jacketed, tunnel visioned. Then it's over. Then it's over.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
there was another question which had come right now.
Yes. Um, so I'm
Dexterity,
putting,
fitness, and poise.
yes, how can we
Yeah,
cultivate
please put that
dexterity?
question.
Yes, how can we cultivate dexterity and
I think yeah, I think it is got it is very foundational and basic. I think everyone should work out their own way to the body should be like a fine instrument. So a fine instrument has to work perfectly, right? So right from the diet that we are checking into, understanding our body and its own deficiencies and systems, and and then attending to it, then a sport or a maybe a dance form or a sport or an art form where hands are, fashioned to really hold the brush or the pencils, or a sport, or a craft, or exercise, rhythmic exercises. All of these are very, very important in life. So whatever is comfortable. So first is understanding your body. Second, the diet and the food that we are intaking in. Then our regular schedules in life, the hours, the morning hours, the evening hours, and the abuse of the body in terms of excessive online and you know I always say there are a few lines which are destroying us. One is the online, the other is the deadline. When we are putting so much of pressure, because the corporates put so much of pressure in your life and my life, and they put deadline. Then the other is what you call the top line and the bottom line. I always call it the top line and the bottom line. The top line, I mean, what do I mean? I mean that do it more, the turnover. I want to do more. This is what the corporatized world is pumping into your life and my life. Do more, then only you're valued. And what is the bottom line? The profit. If there is tremendous profit, I am there. If there's no profit, I'm getting tensed. And finally, I call it the what you call the hemline, which I will call the fashion world, which is the image that you want to put in your life. Especially in the social media, we want to be image bearers, right? And we struggle. We are not our natural self. We struggle. All of this puts a tremendous pressure on our body, and we lose the grace. So be very careful on what you are consuming and what you are actually, in your life. What is the diets that you are consuming in your life? And then, is there any sport, craft, art, music, whatever it is that is there? Try to develop on those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. George. We've got another question. Dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty is not easy. How do we deal with this?
First of all, let us look at it from the perspective of the biblical perspective. When the word says that, the word is very reinforcing that because we are designed for to be in his image. There is a fashioning that he has already seen us before our creation, and we are given our lives to Christ. We understand that there is the grand weaver in action. He is making your life and my life into a fashion that is the best suited for our existence. And for that fashion to happen, certain things which are not effective in this world, he doesn't come and straight away talk to us. There are certain things which are not really working well for us in our lives, which we are continuously, repeatedly doing it. With the past mistakes, we are not really concerned about, or we are not really conscious about it. So certain circumstances come in our life where we have to deliberately plug it away, or situations are such that. So once we have the confidence that God is in control and there's a fashion that He's making out of our lives into the design that He wants, He has already got a design in His mind. As an architect, I can understand it so well because my clients always, they start fighting at the starting point. Because when we put one stage, they'll say, no, this is not what is happening. This is, you are not really doing it the way that we want. When I keep on saying that I have understood your mind, and I've already got a conceptualization which is total. This is only part of it. At this point, it may look ugly. Trust me. I tell them as an architect, you trust me. At this point, when I'm converting it into the totality, it is looking ugly and it is looking tough. But when certain clients say, yeah, we trust you, let it go. Similarly, with the repos, we also have problem. I'm going through uncertainties in life at this point of time. There are certain situations which I can't even understand. But the only way I understand right now is God is in control. He is in control. Because the natural thing also, we are not in control. Our breath, we are just one breath away, isn't it? The nature can take its toll any point of time. So what are we in control actually? We are not in control. But God is in control and we are his instruments. Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question, Mr. George, is what were few struggles that hindered you from being creative in your life?
Okay, my struggles have been many, many struggles. I think one of the greatest struggles because is I was never balancing between. I told point number five, which was the delicate balancing between science and art, logic and imagination, romance and reason. A whole set of thinking is like this. So being a creative person, I was really going and that was my comfort zone, right? So I would definitely pursue with all energy my creative energies alone, meaning the artistic energies. Whereas the scientific energies or the analytic energies, which also need to be parallelly put, was never engaged at many times in my life. So that is an imbalance. But at some point of time, so many a time, my imaginations were running right because I was by default a very imaginative person and I felt too comfortable with that. But that logic was completely sacrificed in that process. So that was definitely not a good system, and I find that my performance has been massively affected because of that. Then my point here is yes, cultivation of grace, dexterity, fitness, and poise. No, definitely, I'm not definitely happy with what I'm doing right now. Absolutely not happy. I need to really work and get my body back into tremendous shape. Tremendous shape. That is so very, very important, isn't it? So that is something which is not happening. The rest, as I said, but just think about the impact of these two things which I didn't work, which I didn't attend to it, and it created havoc in my life in terms of the practical productivity or the result of my work. So right now, I'm just really working on these 7 points and seeing where we can really plug the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Josh. We got one more question in the chat box, and it says, could you please elaborate how you can find romance in
Find romance in reason.
reason? How? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. That is the biggest issue right now. No, see the romance in reason, because the first thinking is always that when we are romantic, everything is an imagine, everything is a flight of fantasy, and that is what creates the huge disasters, isn't it? Many of the love affairs falls because there is no reason in that romance. So within romance, there is certain bounds and the laws which God gives us. There is certain reasonableness. So when I say reasonableness, it doesn't mean that I need to calculate and I need to sort of there's a give and take formula and all of that stuff. No, but it has to be founded on certain practical applicabilities. So I cannot explain beyond that because that is a so that is something I know that it is true. A reasonable person thinks that he cannot be romantic, and a romantic person can thinks that he cannot be that reason oriented. But I've seen beautiful minds who are both romantic and very very reasonable. So practical examples are there. I am not in a position to explain further because it's a very personal topic, and I think everyone should make their own exploration. But it's a fact of life. Blind love. I don't know what does that mean by blind love. I mean blind love.
Thank you, Mr. George. We've got one more question. Thank you very much for sharing such profound learning, which is biblically based and tested in your own life experience. Could you share how you developed this integral perspective?
I was actually, this integral perspective is not mine. I was actually referring through books of the great minds. The great minds like I told, Albert Einstein or Alexander the Great or Thomas Jefferson, Michelangelo, or the pyramid builders or Da Vinci. These are the great minds, some of the great minds. So when you really delve into how their minds operated, and then you started getting clue of how they were operating. There are so you read some of those books and some of those tools that they engaged to unleash the potential of their minds. We come up across with these points. So it's basically, and I've been so basically it is the analysis of the minds of some of those great people and some of the great builders and epoch creators. But it was then once the points were received from certain literature surveys and books and stuff like that, I started applying it and I started checking it and I found that this is very, very true. And then started trying to give a correlation with the biblical perspective. And then I found that, this is how God intends now. Every mind is a creative mind. Every mind is a genius. So I always tell my students, in school, or in college, do you believe that you are a genius? Yes. No, some of your friends might have scored much better or performed well. That doesn't mean you are not working on the right project in the right frame. That is why you are not able to perform. That's it. Or in the right scenario you are. So everyone is born a creative genius, and God expects us to do that. So when we connect this to the biblical perspective, also reinforces that. There was absolutely no confusion. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, George. We're moving. We got two more questions from the audience. The first one is:
Yeah, yeah,
Were
yeah,
people
yeah.
led to were people led to trusting in Jesus by interacting with you professionally?
I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Where people led to Jesus by interacting. I'm not really too sure. In the professional sense, I was able to really, when I really work in the professional sense, attracted to Jesus. But I have always connected my thoughts of the creative thoughts to the act of creation, and how God created the world, and how He intends every man and woman to be co-creators. We are co-creators. So, and I always used to tell my clients, and how that is really reinforced my thoughts in creative pursuits. So I don't know whether it has worked through my profession or through my talks. But I guess in some way or other, some people might have got impacted a little bit here and there. I'm sure. But I always believe that we are co-creators. God intends us to be co-creators in a particular sense, given the tools that He has given us. Use that, and we become co-creators in the creation. Because otherwise, how can He say that He created in His own image, and then He went before that to create the greatest creation of all what humanity can conceive, the heavens and the earth.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. George. I was thinking of sustainable development, green cover, and all that, and suddenly a question related to that popped up.
Yeah.
Being an
Yeah.
architect, do
Yeah.
you find it difficult in combining biblical principles and practicing architecture?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. In fact, the garden was asked to be tended and, you know, made to be looked after, right? In Genesis is so important chapters, initial chapters of Genesis. The garden was made, and man was entrusted with that to look after that. So basically, the garden is very, very important. The garden is very important in architecture, and my architecture has always been interspersing the greens into the buildings. It can never stand on its own, because if you really go and look into nature, nothing else on its own. Like earlier, I said everything is connected. Everything is so interrelated. There is nothing which has its own, what do you call, the separatistic individuality. It is a kind of a complementary individuality that every element in nature has. What do I mean by complementary individuality? Everything has an individuality, but that individuality actually enhances the individuality of somebody else. Did you get what I'm trying to say? So when three people with strong individuality comes in, it is not that everyone becomes an island by itself, but each person reinforces or enhances other person's individuality, and that becomes the holistic thinking. So my architecture has always been that whether it's a client or the building, the nature, all of that has to be interconnected, and people have to co-live with nature. So, and there are many subscribers to that vision. In fact, recently we are coming up with a new concept called how agriculture can be incorporated into architecture, so that people can actually really have a beneficial agroforestry also within their building. We call it agri-texture. It's a new term, and I'm encouraging youngsters to pursue that. Try to bring in those elements. So no, I've been very much accepted by many of my clients when I talk in these lines. People do understand that, because people are quite intelligent. They understand the benefit of how important nature is, and how it can be sustain. It has to be sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, beautiful. I must look in. I must look more into agriculture now. Yeah, we got another question.
Yeah.
Can you tell how before creating something, do you use creative visualization, and how dreaming is important, and how do you practice it?
oh, 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 oh. Yeah. The thing is, it's like It's like music. In music, when we hear somebody sing a song, we enjoy it so much if it's a nice song and which is sort of catering to our taste. But this is very important. This is what I call logic and imagination. So it's a beautifully imaginatively rendered song and so beautiful. But the singer, not at the point of singing, but at the composition level, has applied tremendous logic into it. Do you understand what I'm saying? The seven notes and the ascension and the descension of the notes and the order and the beat and the spacing between each note, everything can be analyzed. So that imaginative piece has tremendous logic into it. So once you are able to understand both, that when you listen to the song, you can enjoy the song, but at the same time, you understand that there is a principle behind it. You don't need to understand the because you're not an expert, but you can at least appreciate the fact there is a scientific basis to that particular music which was just rendered to it. Otherwise it is just disturbance. Now second thing is a kite in the sky. A kite flies, but there is an if it is an invisible thread, let's say a transparent thread is attached to the kite will fly and sway in the winds and have its own fun and crawling, but the holder of the string, the invisible string, holds it in motion and pulls it in the right way so that the dance is performed in the sky. So basically, there is a science to it, right? So even in there's a hidden uh, uh, parameter which is very concrete. In that flight of imagination and that highly pursuit of creativity, there is a concrete element which is holding it in place. Similarly, you asked me my question: how do I start my creative process? First of all, all of the creative process should have the foundational principles first understood, the theoretical principles understood. Once the theoretical principles are there as a foundational bedrock, then you live it and breathe it and start imagining in your mind. I don't use computers at all for imaginations. I never use computers. I'm not at all friendly with computers because I feel that I can do that in my mind when even before I go to sleep, or that mental visualization is there. But everything is just like the music and like the kite. It is anchored by certain principles. So what is that principles? That has to be test knowledge of that particular discipline. So it cannot be wild imagination is very. That is why alone philosophy alone is very dangerous because there is no bounds to it. Philosophy alone will never take you anywhere because there is no bounds to it. That's why the laws of the Lord are so beautiful to us, isn't it? Because there is something which is bound within that the creativity happens. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. George, it looks like we're going with the last question for the day. Others, if you have any more questions, please do pop up.
Okay.
Yeah. So you mentioned about let's fail fast, but let's fail fast can turn to be
Yeah.
disastrous. How can we avoid dangerous disasters?
Yeah. Dangerous disasters. Yeah. Because it's basically it has to go the when we try to do things without proper preparation, a certain backup principles and stuff like that. Any pursuit can be very dangerous when exactly as I said, it doesn't have the backup of to practically speak the limits of failure. The we need to engage. So when we say fail fast or you can create a mistake, we understand the framework within which the mistake can operate, the top point and the bottom point. So we have to fix certain frameworks. Like for instance, if a business enterprise is doing, if we are launching a business enterprise, I'm just doing something in agriculture. What we do is I know what is the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. Both these have to be conceived in the minds, and I should be able to handle my worst case scenario. But just because there is a possibility of a worst case scenario, if I don't do it, then I also lose the chance of a best case scenario also. So when I'm ready to handle a worst case scenario in terms of resources, in terms of my mental energy or whatever it is, I think I will be able to handle it. But we have to fail, but within certain frameworks. Yep.
Mm. It's amazing. You said we have to fail, but within certain frameworks. Cool. Yep. Looks like we don't have any other questions. I think then we can call it off
Okay.
for the day. So thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. George, for taking your time,
Thank
and
you
thank
so
you for
much.
sharing your thoughts. Others, we've got some 14 participants here apart from me and Mr. George. Thank you very much for taking your time and being a
Thank
part
you
of
so much.
DRM. That's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you so much.